Hi everyone, welcome back. And in today's video, I'm going to be going through all the books I read in February, which is about 22 books. And based on how long my January book wrap up was, we gotta keep this moving. So hopefully this video will be a little bit shorter and a little bit more to the point about each of the books that I read. So again, I'm gonna be breaking this video up by genre like I did last time. That seemed to work for me. So let's just get right into it. My first category is gonna be books that I reread. So these are the books that helped me fall asleep at night, and they are Clockwork Angel by Cassandra Clare, Clockwork Prince by Cassandra Clare, Clockwork Princess, also by Cassandra Clare. I gave each of those books 4 stars, mostly for nostalgia reasons, but those are the books that I've been listening to as I fall asleep. The next category is going to be contemporary / thriller. So I don't read a lot of contemporary books, and I only read one thriller this month, so they're just going to be kind of lumped together. The first book I want to talk about is The Death of Vivek Oji by Ekweke Emezi. Now, The Death of Vivek Oji opens up with Vivek's mother finding Vivek dead on her doorstep, and the novel is about, you know, the events leading up to Vivek's death and kind of what happened. I liked this book because I enjoy Ekweke Emezi's writing quite a bit. However, this is just not my genre. I saw the twist at the end coming. It didn't emotionally impact me that much because I saw it coming, and this just really isn't my genre. So I really need to stop picking up contemporary books that are just like hard-hitting slice of life type things. They just don't work for me, and I don't think this book is bad. It's just not for me. So I gave it a 3 stars because I do think the writing is super spectacular, and I think a lot of people would enjoy this book if you're into contemporary hard-hitting books. The thriller book I want to talk about is My Sister, the Serial Killer by Oyinkan Braithwaite. And this is about, the title kind of explains it pretty succinctly, about how the main character's sister, so the main character's name is Korede, and her sister Ayola has a knack for killing her partners. And this is pretty psychological. We're trying to figure out how Korede is dealing with her sister being a serial killer, and then her sister Ayola starts to be interested in Korede's crush. So it's kind of like a will she, won't she kill this man, and how is Korede gonna react? And this was pretty good. I was really like on the edge of my seat wanting to know if Ayola would do it, if she wouldn't, how Korede would react. And the manipulation factor in this book, the twisty psychological stuff was really good. So yeah, I thought it was pretty good. So I gave it a 3.5 stars, which is pretty good for me. I don't think it's super memorable for me. It's a really short book, and it just didn't like have a super lasting impact, which is why I gave it a 3.5, because I thought it was good. The next contemporary book I'm going to talk about is The Switch by Beth O'Leary. And, you know, looking at this cover, this looks like a romance book, and I picked it up thinking that it was a romance book. And honestly, I would categorize this as more of a contemporary, which is why I'm talking about it. And so the premise of this book is that Eileen Cotton is a 79-year-old woman who lives in a small village, and she's bored with her life, and she wants to go on an adventure and maybe find love. And her granddaughter, Lena, is kind of reeling from the death of her sister, and she also kind of made a mistake at work, which is very stressful. She had a panic attack, so she needs to kind of have a vacation. So Eileen and Lena swap lives, so Grandma Eileen can have a fun fling in London while Lena kind of recuperates in the small town. And this is really sweet, and this hit me really hard. It's supposed to be super lighthearted and fun and whimsical, and it is all that, but it just affected me really personally because it made me think of my grandmothers and my husband's grandmother, who have all passed away at this point. And Lena is kind of my age. She's about 27 or 28, and I'm 26, turning 27, and Eileen just reminded me of all of the wonderful women in my life who have passed on, and so it was just really emotional for me on a very personal level. So I gave this book 5 stars. It's really about this family coming together after the death of Lena's sister, and there is an element of romance to this as well, but it's really not the focus. Like, Eileen is going off on an adventure and, you know, having flings in London, but it's really not about that. It's more about this family and coming together and making a difference. And so I'm super biased, but there you go, 5 out of 5 stars for me. Next category is nonfiction. So the first nonfiction I'm going to talk about is The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks, which is about the woman behind the HeLa cells. So the HeLa cells are cancer cells that were taken from Henrietta's body without her knowledge or permission, and these cells are very special because they, to this day, are still alive, like 60 years after the fact, and they keep reproducing and growing, which has led to a lot of medical and scientific discovery and made a lot of people really wealthy. And Henrietta and her family lived in and are living kind of in squalor, and it's about their story and how they didn't get any of that money from Henrietta's cells. And this book I gave a 4 stars. I thought it was pretty good, but it really focused on dual storytelling and weaving those two together. And it's, you know, half about Henrietta and her experience and the cells, but it is really about Deborah, who is Henrietta's daughter, and her life, and Deborah trying to figure out what happened to Henrietta and her story. So I gave this a 4 stars. I thought it was pretty good. Just that kind of dual timeline thing kind of threw me off at first, and there were some moments when I was like, well, I care more about Henrietta, or I want to read more about Deborah. So there were moments when I was kind of being flipped back and forth. But overall, this book is very science heavy, and it brings up a very disturbing moral dilemma about body autonomy and scientific discovery and capitalism. So I think this book brings up a lot of really good conversations, and I do recommend it. The next 2 books I also recommend, but they are more like gut punches than anything else. And the first one is Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates. And this is a letter Ta-Nehisi wrote to his son about growing up Black in America and his hopes for his son as his son grows up. And this, it feels like a gut punch, like I said, for many reasons, but like the racism in America is truly atrocious and horrifying. This was really well written, and it was really unashamed about its truths about what it's like being Black in America, and I think it's an important read. 5 out of 5 stars for this one, but I think you got to be in the right headspace to absorb this piece of work fully, in my opinion. The next one is Know My Name by Chanel Miller, and Chanel Miller is the rape victim of Brock Turner. So obviously this is her memoir about what she went through with the trial and her experience in the media, and her trying to stay out of the public light, trying to protect herself and her family, and how much it affected her. And I was honestly nauseous for about 80% of this book because of how horrifying and sad it was to read about this woman's experience and her trauma and her emotional roller coaster process of trying to process the grief and this violation. I was physically ill, like actually physically ill reading some of this because of how disgusted I was with how she was treated. The writing in this is gorgeous. It's another one where I think everyone should read this, but you have to be in the right headspace for it. And this book really took a lot out of me, but I think it's so important to read Chanel's story. So that's all I'll say on that, and we'll move on to some lighter topics. The next category is romance. So after reading all that hard-hitting nonfiction, lots of romance for me to kind of perk me back up. However, I'll start with the one that I really didn't like, and that was A Sweet Mess by J.C. Lee. This is the premise of this is about a young pastry chef named Aubrey Choi, and she accidentally gives a Franken cake that she specifically made for a child's birthday party, and it has all sorts of weird ingredients in it, and she accidentally serves that cake to a food critic who absolutely blasts her in his review because of the switch up. And so this book is about Landon Kim, who is the food critic, and Aubrey kind of coming together to fix the situation and fix the reputation of the bakery. And I really wanted this to have vibes of Always Be My Maybe, which is a really cute rom-com on Netflix that has to do with like Korean food and these two people coming together over food. And this had that element, but I gave this a 1 star because there is a pregnancy plotline in this book, and that might be spoiling it, but it's the reason I absolutely hated it. And I just really didn't like how the pregnancy plotline played out, and I've just decided that I really hate that kind of trope in romance books. So from now on, I will be looking for that specifically to avoid in romance books because I just really didn't like how it was handled in this book. The romance book that got me out of my slump after reading Know My Name is How to Catch a Queen by Alyssa Cole. Now this is a lot of fun. This is about an arranged marriage between Sanyu and Shanti, and Sanyu is the king of a magical, or not a magical, a fake kingdom, and they are thrust into an arranged marriage, and they eventually fall in love. So there's a lot of political intrigue going on in the kingdom, and Shanti's trying to help. And I thought this was really cute. I gave it 4 stars. The first 50% of the book I'd say is a little rough because Sanyu has a lot of internalized misogyny and that he has to work through, and he starts to work through it. So the first 50%, it's like really frustrating to read from his perspective because he's so arrogant. Then he actually starts to work on it at the latter half of the book, which I thought was brilliantly executed. Another thing I really liked about this book is there are triads in this book. And it's like not a big deal. So there's a side character who has a husband and a wife, and all 3 of them are in a marriage together, and it's just like a thing, and it's not commented on because it's just normal in this culture, and I really enjoyed that. I love to see different types of relationships in romance books that are just there and they don't need to be commented on. So I really liked this and I gave it 4 stars. All right, the next bunch of books are all by Jasmine Guillory, and Jasmine Guillory is a Black romance writer, and I binged all 5 of her series, starting with The Wedding Date. So I'm going to talk about these books, the series order, just to make it a little bit more sense. So the first one is The Wedding Date, which is like a fake dating trope where this man, Drew, and Alexa, the woman, get stuck in an elevator together, and they end up going to a wedding together, so Drew doesn't have to be alone. and they end up falling in love. I thought this one was fun. I gave it a 3 stars, but Drew is such an ass. I mean, Alexa is black and Drew is white, and there's definitely some yikes conversations that they have because Drew is just kind of so far up his ass, he doesn't really think about race when it's quite important in their relationship. But he does, in my opinion, redeem himself for the most part, which is why I gave it a 3 stars. The second book in the series is called The Proposal, and this has one of Drew's friends named Carlos as one of the leads, as well as a new character named Nicole. And this book kicks off when Nicole is proposed to on the Jumbotron at a baseball stadium by a guy she's been only dating for 5 months, and she says no because she doesn't love him. So Carlos whisks Nicole away to kind of help and make sure she gets home okay, and they end up forming a relationship. Now this one I thought was really cute, and I liked it a lot better than The Wedding Date. Carlos is Hispanic and Nicole is black, so we have, you know, a mixed race couple, but I think it was handled a little bit better in The Proposal. Then we have The Wedding Party. Now, of the Jasmine Guillory books I read, this is the best one, in my opinion. And this has a true enemies to lovers secret relationship trope that I thought was fabulously executed. So this follows Maddie and Theo, who are Alexa's best friends from book 1. And Maddie and Theo absolutely hate each other. And they are both in the wedding party for Alexa and Drew. So they have to do a bunch of events with them, and they absolutely hate each other, but they end up tumbling into bed all the time. And I just thought this one was a load of fun, and it was truly, like, they truly went from enemies to lovers with a lot of sexy time. And so I just thought this was so fun. I thought it was well executed. Both Maddie and Theo are black, and so you've got, you know, them together, which I thought was really great and nice to see. Yeah, I thought this was great. This is my favorite one of the series, so I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Then we have Royal Holiday by Jasmine Guillory, which has a whirlwind vacation romance vibe with a woman named Vivian, and Vivian is Maddie's mom. It's kind of confusing. And so this is about an older woman in her 50s, and they go on a vacation to England for Maddie's job, and Vivian ends up meeting Malcolm, who is the secretary to the Queen, and they end up forming this little vacation romance, which might be more than just a vacation romance. And so this one was really sweet. I thought that seeing an older woman get her own romance book was really delightful to watch them fall in love, and just nice that this older couple got together and to be happy. So I gave this one a 3.5 stars. I thought that Malcolm at times was a little bit of a stick up the butt, Malcolm is a little bit of a prick, but in the end it all, you know, works out, and so I gave it a 3.5 stars. Oh my gosh, then the last Jasmine Guillory. I'm so sorry, there's so many. Is Party of Two, which follows Olivia, who is Alexa's sister from the first book, falling in love with Max Powell, who is a politician. And they kind of meet at a bar, and then it just kind of ends up where they keep, you know, crossing paths because she's a lawyer and he's a politician, so they go to like fundraising events together, and it starts a really sweet romance. And I guess I just don't like reading about politician characters because I just really didn't connect with Max at all. So I gave it a 3 stars. I thought it was just okay, on par with book 1 for me, just because I didn't connect with Max as much. The last category is sci-fi fantasy. All right, let's do this. Unfortunately, there is a sci-fi fantasy book I really didn't like, and that is Persephone Station by Stina Light. Now, the premise of this book is that there is an evil corporation who are causing trouble for a local community, and we have two characters. We have Rosie, short for Rosencrantz, who is a non-binary person who runs kind of some illegal activity, and Rosie hires Angel, who is a ship captain slash smuggler, to help out the locals, to protect them. There is also a secondary plot line with an AI being named Kennedy, who is trying to uncover the plot that the organization, the corporation is, you know, about. So she's like investigating. Those are the three perspectives. This is multi-POV, and that's just not my favorite. The one issue that I definitely took with this book is that each point of view sounds like the same character. Almost. I really couldn't tell the difference in voice between the characters, and therefore I didn't really connect with anyone in particular. I did like each member of the cast was in the LGBTQIA plus community, and there were non-binary characters, non-binary main characters, side characters. There were characters dealing with chronic illnesses, which is important to me, but I just didn't enjoy the plot because I didn't connect with any of our point of view characters very well. And this book has a lot of telling versus showing, so I didn't even really like the writing style. So I ended up giving Persephone Station 2 stars. Unfortunately, it just didn't really work for me, and it's almost 600 pages, so it was quite a long book for me to not really care about the characters. So that's this one, and we can move on now. Next we have How Long Till Black Future Month by N.K. Jemisin. Now, N.K. Jemisin, one of my favorite authors of all time. I've got one of her books facing out right behind me. And this is a short story collection that she put together, which I thought was perfect to read for Black History Month. And this is all science fiction and fantasy stories, and I really liked about 4 or 5 of the stories. I thought some of the stories were absolutely fantastic, and she actually has a story, you know, set in this universe, the Dream Blood duology universe, which I absolutely loved. But I felt pretty meh or lukewarm about the rest of the stories. So those 4 or 5 stories, I was like 5 stars for these, but the other ones I was like, not for me. So I ended up kind of balancing it out and giving this book, this collection as a whole, 3 stars. If I would love to buy a copy of this book and then like tag the stories that I really enjoyed and read them again because I like them so much. And speaking of N.K. Jemisin, I went on a little bit of a binge for N.K. Jemisin, and I read the first 9 volumes. I can't even fan them all out. The first 9 volumes of the Far Sector comic book series. And so these are just short little individual comic books. And this is a sci-fi story about Jo, who is a Green Lantern, and she has been sent to investigate a murder on this planet where there hasn't been a murder in 500 years. So they need a detective to figure out what is going on. And of course, a bigger plot unfolds. And I really quite enjoyed, this is the second time reading some of these comics, and I really quite enjoyed my time. I gave these all between a 4 and a 5 star. There are some weaker volumes and some really great volumes. So the series as a whole has like a 4.5 stars for me. And I just absolutely love the artwork in here. It's so saturated and beautiful and dark, and it's so lovely to see such a badass lady on the cover. A badass black lady Green Lantern on the cover. So I really enjoyed my time with these, and I think there are 12 volumes coming out in total. So I'll have to pick those up when they are available. So this is volume 1, and I might show you the rest because they're so pretty. There's 2, 3. Oh, this one might be my favorite cover. She's like breaking up a mob. 4. I don't really like this cover as much, but can't win them all, right? 6, ooh, very romantic. 7. This one's really cool too, though. Such a good action scene. And the last volume that I have is this one. Oh, they're so great. I love these comics. They were fantastic. Now we're getting into the last couple of books, and these are my absolute favorite fiction books I read this month. And the first 5-star sci-fi fantasy book, The Relentless Moon by Mary Robinette Kowal. I have been screaming about this series since I found out about it, and since I started my channel, really. And The Relentless Moon is the 3rd book in the Lady Astronauts series, which includes The Calculating Stars, The Fated Sky, and The Relentless Moon, as well as several short stories, which I haven't read yet. And I almost like this book the best. I think the 3rd book in this series might be my favorite. We follow, the first 2 books, we follow Elma York, and in this one, we're following Nicole Wargan, who is the wife of a politician and an astronaut in her own right. And Nicole is sly and manipulative, and she's very good at being a politician's wife. And some messy stuff goes down where she is trying to uncover a plot that is trying to undermine the space program, and so she's like investigating and trying to figure out what's going on. And I just loved the intrigue and the action in this book. There's a lot of action and a lot of intrigue, and I absolutely love Nicole as a character. I cannot speak highly enough about this book. This series is just fantastic. Every single one of these books is a 5 stars and a new favorite book for me. I absolutely love them, and I need to move on because I'll just gush forever. Next, we have Pet by Akwaeke Emezi, and I went on a little bit of a Akwaeke Emezi binge because I really enjoy her writing, and that's no exception for Pet. And Pet is about a girl named Jam who is trans and Black, and she's kind of nonverbal. She uses sign language as well as her voice on occasion. And this is about Jam, who is basically fighting a monster that no one else can see. I'll leave it vague at that. And this reads a lot like a middle grade book in tone, but it deals with some pretty heavy subjects like child abuse, and there's a mention of rape, and so this is a pretty heavy-hitting fantasy book, but I absolutely cried. I absolutely shed so many tears at the end of this book because it was so hard-hitting, and it had like this weight to it about like these inevitable truths that Jam is discovering, and it was just this book was just so powerful and beautiful, and it's also a new favorite for me, and I can't wait to get my own copy of this. I really enjoy Akwaeke Emezi's writing, and I want to reread this, honestly. I wish I had a copy, but I got mine from the library, so there you go. That's Pet by Akwaeke Emezi, 5 out of 5 stars. Oh, the other thing about Pet that I really enjoyed, there's also a triad. In one of the parents is non-binary, so we have a woman, a man, and a non-binary person all married to one another, and it's just like not a big deal. And I think that's great. It was so fun to see that in Pet, which I absolutely loved. The last February read, I made a whole video on it, so I won't talk too much, but it's The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. I will link my review up above. This is about Linus Baker, who has to investigate a magical orphanage to make sure everything is running smoothly and the children there are being taken care of. And I cried 3 times. I read this book 2 times in 1 week, and I made a whole video just dedicated to this book because of how much I loved it. So there you have it. That's all I'm gonna say about it, just because I've spent so long talking about it already. But this book means quite a lot to me, actually. So yeah, check out that video if you're interested in further thoughts. But obviously, 5 out of 5 stars, new favorite book, new favorite comfort book. I'll probably listen to this while I fall asleep, maybe next month. So that was it. Those are all the books I read in February. Wow, what a ride. February was a good reading month, even though some other things weren't going so well for me, but at least I enjoyed most of what I read. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have an excellent reading experience for March, and I will catch you in my next video. Bye!